Good morning. My name is Emilio Boza. I'm president of the Scientific Council or Committee of the Foundation, Ramon Areces, and I am in charge of, well, I'm a doctor who's worked all his life in infectious diseases, so you'll understand that it's a pleasure, a special pleasure to welcome you here to this foundation. Most of you know the foundation. Those of you who don't, I will tell you that it is a foundation, one of the oldest in Spain, devoted to promoting science and culture in all its aspects, and its main mission is to attract talent and promote knowledge in our country. We finance research projects, we give grants, pre- and postdoctoral grants, and we promote the dissemination of culture through events like this one today. Normally, when we, as members of the foundation, have to introduce working groups, we're not always aware of the dimension of the contents that are brought here, because you can't know everything in life. So it's a special pleasure and satisfaction to understand what's going to be dealt with today, which is the world of antibiotics in the field of veterinary science or medicine, which is so close to the problem of humans. These two professions understand well that health is unique, or there's only one health, human health and animal health. And I remember coming back from the US many years ago. I worked in transplants and other areas, and I remember I opened up an office and I had weekly consultation on brucellosis, which has disappeared from our world thanks to the collaboration of our two disciplines. The problem of antibiotics, I don't have to explain to you, but I know it because of my age. I've been present and I've seen the emergence of most antibiotics that we use clinically today in humans, and I've also seen the emergence, unfortunately, of their frequent deterioration because through abuse and improper use throughout these years. An activity like the one today by not just the Spanish agency, but the culture of not having frontiers of the two countries that we share a frontier, a border with, in terms of the best use of antibiotics and the incorporation of new antibiotics to veterinary use and also in humans is a special pleasure. So without further ado, I pass the floor to Maria Jesus Lamas, who's the executive director of the AEMPS, the Spanish agency, and she will host this and chair this session, which we hope is fruitful. We're going to have it on streaming, and you've got simultaneous interpreting too. So thank you and welcome to everyone. Thank you for being here. Well, thank you very much, Professor Boza, for that introduction and your kind words. Good morning to everyone. One of the privileges that I have as director of the AMPS is to be in places like this, at events like this, to present what we're going to learn about this morning. Very important, with professionals of this level who one can learn from. I think that I'm not telling you anything new if I say that the supply problems of drugs are one of the main concerns of all drug agencies and authorities. We're used to seeing in the press, on the media, the problem of not finding certain antibiotics, analgesics. Some can be replaced easily, but it's becoming a problem which is a public health threat. The European pharmaceutical strategy, which started in November 2020, is based on 4 pillars, and it is the tool for transforming the pharmaceutical industry in Europe over the next 10, 20 years. These four pillars, one is focused on patients, in order to have the drugs that the patients need, especially areas that are not covered, and especially antibiotic resistance. Another pillar is the industry, a competitive industry in Europe that attracts innovation and development to Europe. That's the idea. And another pillar is to get ready in the face of crises or public health threats by strengthening the supply chains and remediating the problems of supply, and finally having a European voice in the world. That is to say, take our standards, quality standards in drug manufacture and other standards that we have to the rest of the world. As you see, the strategy is focused on human health, but human health is not separate, as Professor Bolza said, from the health of animals. And supply problems which affect human drugs also are beginning to affect some drugs, very important drugs, for animals. And last week we had a top-level meeting in Sweden. Sweden is now the president of the EU on AMR, antimicrobial resistance, which everybody understands today. And one of the issues that we spoke about was how to find mechanisms to stimulate and promote the development of antibiotics and make sure that they remain on the market. At world level, there are other initiatives. Recently, the WHO with France has published a report. They're working on a project to try to minimize the lack of availability of antibiotics after patents run out, which is a time of risk in human and veterinary medicine. And I was saying that we're used to seeing how important supply problems are in the press, in the media, when it affects human drugs, but it's equally important when it affects veterinary use drugs. There are beginning to be problems with some vaccines and some antibiotics, and that has implications not only in terms of the animals that they're aimed at, but the problem of a lack of vaccines can lead to more infections, which can lead to more risk in the food chain and can have implications for human health and important financial repercussions. Also, when you drop the bar and in terms of infections, you tend to use more antibiotics in animals and humans, so resistance to antibiotics increases, and therefore you also lose the power of a tool. And when supply is limited and too short, the antibiotics are used more intensively, so resistance is even a greater problem. We must not forget that 6 in 10 infection diseases in humans are zoonoses. So preventing in veterinary medicine, or threats in veterinary medicine, also threaten humans. That's why it's so important to ensure measures to guarantee supply and availability of veterinary drugs. In the framework of the PRAN, the National Plan for Antimicrobial Resistance, there's a working group to promote the availability of antibiotics, especially in antimicrobials, and to search for alternatives that can be used in animal health. The idea is to find solutions for this problem and to try to fill the gaps or breach the therapeutic gaps, and especially in limited markets, as they're called. And with this aim, and thinking that we are facing a problem that is really large and serious, we cannot address this in a minimalist fashion. We must be ambitious and wish to cover as much ground as possible. And that's why we've joined our neighbours, the Portuguese Authority for Veterinary Drugs and the French Agency for Veterinary Drugs. And recently the Irish Agency has joined too, because the more we are, the better or the greater the possibility to find a solution to this problem. Today we are going to work in this session on veterinary drugs to improve antimicrobials and alternatives with several aims. We want to present to you the possibilities that the regulatory framework gives us to have more veterinary drugs, flexibility so that authorized medicines in one country can be used in another. The idea is for us all to participate in this solution. Some of the possibilities we can talk about and debate, and then what we need is all the contribution of you, researchers and the industry. We want these tools to be known, and we are going to present the initial results of our work where we've identified the current priorities divided by industries in terms of antimicrobials and their alternatives. And that's all from me, really. I hope that what we present to you is attractive enough to make you join this adventure. I hope you have a fruitful session. And I want to thank our colleagues who are connected online, some from Portugal, some from France, and those of you and Portuguese and French representatives here in the room. Thank you very much, because we believe that with the strength of our teams, we will be able to at least try to control the problem of supply. Thank you. Have a fruitful session. Good. Well, good morning from me too. Thank you to those of you online. I want to remind you that if you want to use these social media to disseminate the meeting today, something that catches your attention, you can use the hashtag availability vet in Spanish, disponibilidad vet. We're going to start a series of keynote speeches which will put the problems in context in terms of supply of antimicrobials. And we're going to invite Andrea Garcia, pharmacist, studied in the Complutense University of Madrid, and she's a microbiologist and parasitologist. She did a specialty at the Ramón y Cajal Hospital. She works at the EMS. She's a clinical evaluator of anti-infectious agents and at the PRAN Coordination Unit, PRAN. Coordination Unit.
Buenos días a todas y a todos. Muchas gracias, Sara, por la presentación y gracias también a mis compañeras de veterinaria del PRAN por darme la oportunidad de contaros brevemente cómo está la situación en el ámbito de la salud humana. Intentaré no extenderme demasiado, que el tema principal del evento de hoy es la situación en sanidad animal. Bueno, los puntos que yo quiero tratar en mi charla es el acceso a antimicrobianos nuevos, pero también a los que ya llevan un tiempo en el mercado. Posteriormente me gustaría hablar un poco de qué iniciativas a nivel financiero tenemos para promover el desarrollo de nuevos antimicrobianos, qué se está haciendo para abordar esa ruptura del mercado que vamos a ver que existe y qué estrategias se han hecho en concreto desde la agencia, incluyendo el listado de medicamentos estratégicos y las acciones contempladas en el contexto del PRAN 2022-2024. Bueno, creo que todos somos conscientes que la amenaza a los antimicrobianos, especialmente a los antibióticos, es una de las principales amenazas que tenemos hoy en día en el ámbito de la salud pública. En un artículo que se publicó el año pasado en el Lancet, se estimaba que casi 5 millones de personas a nivel mundial fallecieron en el año 2019 como consecuencia de algún factor relacionado con la resistencia a los antibióticos. De estas, 1,27 millones morían directamente por este fenómeno, lo que significaría que cada día mueren a nivel mundial 3.500 personas como resultado directo de resistencia a antibióticos. Para hacer frente a esta situación, uno de los pilares fundamentales debe ser el desarrollo de nuevos agentes antimicrobianos. Sin embargo, asistimos a un fenómeno en el que cada vez menos antibióticos nuevos alcanzan el mercado. De hecho, la última clase completa, totalmente novedosa, con un nuevo mecanismo de acción de antibióticos, fue descubierta a finales de los años
at the end of the 80s,
sería la familia de los
which is the
lipopéptidos, cuyo representante principal, la daptomicina, se descubrió en el año 1987
was
y se
discovered
autorizó
in
para su uso en Europa en el
1967,
2006.
daptomycin.
A esto habría un par de
And there
excepciones, en
are a
realidad,
couple of
la bedaquilina,
exceptions,
que se autorizó en el año
bedaquiline, which was
2014 para el
authorized in
tratamiento de la
2014 for
tuberculosis
TB,
multiresistente,
multi-resistant
y
TB,
la
and
fidaxomicina, que se autorizó en
fidaxomicin,
el
which
año
was
2011 para el
authorized in
tratamiento de las
2011
infecciones por
for
clostridioides difíciles. Pero, como
CDI.
veis, son
But
dos antibióticos
these
con
are two
indicaciones muy
antibiotics that are
concretas de
very
patógenos
specific for
concretos.
very specific
El
pathogens.
pipeline
The
actual cuenta con
pipeline today has a
algunos
few
antibióticos que son
innovative
verdaderamente innovadores,
medicines,
pero
but
no podemos emocionarnos
we
mucho
can't get too
porque es cierto que la tasa de
excited
abandono
because
a lo largo del pipeline
rate
es muy
of the
elevada. Se
dropout
estima que
rate
solo
is very
uno
high.
de cada
Only one in
cada 6
about
antibióticos
6
que inicia
antibiotics
ensayos
that
de fase
begin
1
phase
va a ser
1 trials
autorizado,
are finally
y esta
authorized,
tasa,
and
si
this
empezamos a
rate,
contar
if we
desde el desarrollo
start
preclínico,
counting from
baja hasta el
preclinical development to
1,5-3,5%.
1.5-3.5%.
Esto lo podemos
Now,
ver
this
en
we
el
can
informe
see
que
in the
publica
report
anualmente la
published every
Organización
year by
Mundial de
the
la Salud,
WHO,
donde hace
where
un
they do
análisis
an
de cuál es el
analysis
estado
of
del
the
pipeline
status of the
de
pipeline
antibióticos a nivel
of
mundial.
antibiotics in the
Como
world.
veis, a
And as
medida
you can
que nos
see,
fijamos
as
en fases más
we
avanzadas
go
del
into more
desarrollo,
advanced
el número de
phases of
nuevas moléculas que
development, the number of
encontramos
new
es menor.
molecules is lower.
De hecho, la OMS en su
The
último informe,
WHO
publicado
in
el
its
año
last
pasado,
report last year
concluye que el pipeline
concluded that the
actual
current
es claramente
pipeline is
insuficiente para poder hacer
inadequate to
frente a
face
al problema de la
the problem
resistencia
of
antimicrobiana.
antimicrobial resistance.
Uno de los motivos por el que esto
One of the
ocurre
reasons
es
why
que
this happens is
investigar,
because
desarrollar y
to
llevar al mercado nuevos
investigate
antibióticos
and take
no
new
es especialmente
antibiotics to the
rentable para la
market is
industria
not especially
farmacéutica.
profitable for the industry.
Si las
If
fuentes
the
que he podido
sources,
consultar
the sources
muestran
I've looked
una
at show an
estimación del coste de
estimate
desarrollar un nuevo
of
antibiótico muy variable, ¿vale?
developing a new
Que va
antibiotic
desde
which varies a lot,
447
from
millones hasta
447 million
2,6
to
miles de millones.
2.6 billion.
Quizás sería bueno disponer de datos más
So maybe we
transparentes
should
que nos
have
permitiesen
better
valorar
data
las
to
dimensiones de las
evaluate the
medidas económicas
dimensions
que
of
vamos
the
a hablar más
financial
adelante.
measures we're going to
Por
talk
otro
about
lado,
later.
el beneficio
On the
medio que
other
genera
hand,
la
the
venta de estos
average
nuevos
benefit from
antibióticos,
these
la
new
industria lo estima en unos
antibiotics is
46 millones de
calculated
euros
at
al año.
46
Esto hace que, si
million a year.
consideramos el
That's
peor
the profit.
escenario, hiciesen
So,
falta
in the
más de
worst
30
case
años para
scenario,
recuperar
we
la
would
inversión
need
realizada.
more than 30 years to recover the investment.
Pasando a
And
hablar
if
un
we
poco de
now
los
talk
antibióticos que ya
about
están en el
antibiotics that
mercado,
are on
lo
the
ha comentado la
market
directora hace un
currently,
momento,
the
los
director has
problemas de
mentioned this,
suministro
the
son
supply
una grave
problems are
preocupación a nivel
grave concern
europeo y
in Europe
mundial,
and the world.
y en esta
And
tabla podéis
here you
encontrar
see
algunos
some
problemas de
of the
suministro de
problems,
antibióticos que han afectado a la
supply
Unión
problems that
Europea
have
en la última
affected the
década.
EU in the last
Me gustaría
decade. I
destacar
would like
dos:
to
el
highlight
problema de
two.
suministro de
Supply
ceftolozano tazobactam, que se debió a un incumplimiento de las especificaciones de calidad del producto que hizo que fuese necesaria una retirada mundial de lotes y que probablemente condujo a un incremento en el uso de carbapenémicos con las implicaciones que eso tiene a nivel de resistencias. Y el otro ejemplo que querría destacar es el de la piperacilina tazobactam en el año 2017, que se debió a una explosión en la única planta de fabricante de principio activo a nivel mundial, que estaba situada en China. No había principio activo, no había antibiótico. De nuevo, probablemente condujo a un incremento del uso de carbapenémicos. La Organización Mundial de la Salud estima que el impacto para los sistemas de salud de la falta de suministro de un único antibiótico puede ser de hasta 20 o 30 millones de euros, lo cual no es nada desdeñable. En el mismo artículo del que hemos extraído la tabla, plantean algunas posibles causas detrás de estos problemas de suministro. No quiero entrar en todas ellas, pero sí destacar lo que ya he comentado, de existencia de un único productor de principio activo situado frecuentemente fuera de la Unión Europea. Se estima que el 70% de los fabricantes de principios activos de antibióticos están en China o India. También existen dificultades para prever incrementos inesperados en la demanda de antibióticos, o el precio de los antibióticos, especialmente los más antiguos en el mercado, no siempre es capaz de equipararse a su valor social. En ese sentido, disponemos, se está discutiendo a nivel global dos tipos de incentivos económicos para fomentar el desarrollo de antibióticos. Por un lado están las iniciativas PUSH, que lo que pretenden es reducir los costes de investigar y desarrollar nuevos antibióticos. Por lo tanto, sería como si empujasen el desarrollo del antibiótico desde el inicio de su descubrimiento hacia etapas posteriores. Y los incentivos PUL lo que pretenden es garantizar que el retorno o beneficio generado por estos antibióticos que se ponen en el mercado es lo suficientemente atractivo. Sería como si nos situásemos al final de la línea de desarrollo de un antibiótico cuando ya está en el mercado y tirásemos de él. Dentro de las iniciativas PUSH, me gustaría enseñaros esta tabla dinámica que nos proporciona el Global Hub de Investigación y Desarrollo en Resistencia a Antimicrobianos, donde podemos ver las inversiones que se han realizado en I+D de antibióticos, pero también de antifúngicos, antiparasitarios, es decir, antimicrobianos en su conjunto. Se pueden ver tendencias anuales, se pueden ver datos por sectores, ¿vale? Desde el punto de vista salud humana, sanidad animal, medio ambiente y a nivel de la sanidad vegetal, y se pueden obtener datos desagregados por países y por etapa de desarrollo. Por destacar algunas de las iniciativas más importantes que nos afectan a nivel de la Unión Europea, tendríamos la JPI, que es una asociación que involucra a más de 29 países y realiza una labor de coordinación de las inversiones en investigación de antibióticos. Tendríamos también el Fondo de Acción AMR, que es una asociación público-privada que pretende que se lleven al mercado de 2 a 4 nuevos antibióticos antes del año 2030, el CARB-X, que es una organización sin ánimo de lucro financiada por distintas entidades de distintos países, o el INCAID, que es el incubador de terapias antibióticas en Europa, que lo que pretende es proporcionar asesoramiento y financiación a spin-offs, a pequeñas empresas, fundamentalmente del ámbito académico, y esto es algo muy importante porque según los datos que proporciona la Organización Mundial de la Salud, la mayor parte de los desarrollos de nuevos antibacterianos se realizan por pequeñas y medianas empresas, muchas veces de origen académico. Además, no quería dejar de mencionar las estrategias EU for Health y Horizonte Europa, que también contemplan partidas específicas económicas para financiar el desarrollo de nuevos antibióticos o medidas para mejorar su uso. En cuanto a los incentivos pool, los 4 más importantes serían los incentivos de precios, que consistiría en incrementar el precio de los antibióticos con el objetivo de que alcancen su valor social, aunque esto podría traer como contrapartida que se limitase el acceso de los pacientes. Los vales transferibles, que serían unos vales para extender el periodo de protección de datos de un medicamento y que se concederían al titular de la comercialización de un antibiótico, pero que podría revenderlo a un tercero. Esto traería como contrapunto el retraso en el desarrollo de medicamentos genéricos. El mercado de opciones, que lo que permitiría es, en fases muy iniciales del desarrollo de un antibiótico, adquirir opciones de compra, de manera que cuando éste se autorice y comercialice, el portador de esas acciones podría bien comprar el antibiótico o bien revenderlas y obtener un beneficio. Esto daría a los desarrolladores de antibióticos flujo de dinero en etapas muy tempranas. Y por último, los llamados premios por entrada en el mercado, que consiste en pagos que se realizan cuando se alcanzan determinados hitos en el desarrollo o modelos de suscripción en los que, como si estuviésemos pagando Netflix, pagamos una cuota fija anual que nos da acceso hasta un nivel determinado de consumo de antibióticos con independencia de que los utilicemos o no. Todo esto se está discutiendo en el contexto de esa estrategia farmacéutica para Europa de la Comisión Europea. En relación a la ruptura del mercado, algunas iniciativas que se han puesto en marcha, la primera de ellas sería el lanzamiento de la Autoridad Europea de Preparación y Respuesta ante alertas sanitarias, que fue puesta en marcha por la Comisión Europea en 2021 y que pretende proporcionar medidas para hacer frente a crisis sanitarias. A finales del año pasado publicó los resultados de un estudio para conocer la viabilidad de depósitos estratégicos de antibióticos a nivel de la Unión Europea. También tenemos el grupo directivo ejecutivo en problemas de suministro y de seguridad de medicamentos, que se estableció hace un año de acuerdo al reglamento que confiere ese papel reforzado a la Agencia Europea de Medicamentos y que lo que pretende es dar una respuesta coordinada y fuerte ante problemas de desabastecimiento de seguridad de medicamentos. Este grupo ejecutivo cuenta con un grupo de trabajo de puntos focales de contacto que realizan monitorizaciones estrechas de problemas de suministro de antibióticos. Y un ejemplo de su actividad lo encontramos en el problema que quizá hayáis escuchado a través de las noticias que ha ocurrido en los últimos meses, desde noviembre del año pasado, en relación a los problemas de suministro de amoxicilina y amoxicilina clavulánico en medicamentos pediátricos. Pues estos grupos han hecho una monitorización estrecha del problema y han implicado a todos los agentes para intentar incrementar capacidades de producción y otras acciones para revertir la situación. Para terminar ya, quería pasar a comentar algunas iniciativas que se han puesto en marcha desde la agencia. La agencia ha publicado el listado de medicamentos estratégicos, que es un grupo de medicamentos para los cuales se considera que habría que adoptar medidas adicionales que nos permitan garantizar que estos van a permanecer en el mercado, porque juegan un papel fundamental en el mantenimiento de la salud y son especialmente vulnerables. Es una lista viva que está en continua actualización y actualmente contiene 541 medicamentos con 295 principios activos. Dentro de estos, los antimicrobianos representan algo más de un 20%, siendo la categoría más abundante la de los antibióticos. Dentro de ellos me gustaría destacar que las penicilinas representan casi una cuarta parte y esto muestra cómo de importante se considera a antibióticos tan antiguos, pero que tienen a la vez un espectro tan reducido y es tan interesante que podamos utilizar. Y así que lo último de todo, en el Plan Nacional frente a la resistencia a los antibióticos, en su edición 2022-2024, también contemplamos algunas acciones dirigidas a hacer frente a esta situación. La primera de ellas sería estudiar cómo estas medidas de financiación, tanto push como que se discuten a nivel global y europeo, se pueden adoptar en nuestro país.
level can be applied nationally in Spain, because we have our idiosyncrasy and not all systems might be valid for us. Also, collaboration with the AEMPS Medicine Supply Guarantee Plan, we're working with FEDIFAR to try to develop a tool that allows to get ahead of the situation when there's going to be a sudden surge in the demand of antibiotics. And we're also working on Revara, a registry of real-world data from antimicrobials of high strategic value and recent approval, to get real-life data on antibiotics that have been recently approved, and that information may be used to generate decisions in terms of specific financing of these antibiotics. So that's all from me, and thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Andrea, por poner en esta jornada la situación de los antimicrobianos de uso humano. Como sabéis, el Plan Nacional trabajamos de una forma One Health, por lo tanto, siempre en cualquiera de nuestras acciones tenemos que ir unificados con la salud humana y con el medio ambiente. A continuación, vamos a dar paso al bloque sobre disponibilidad de antimicrobianos y sus alternativas en medicina veterinaria. Y para ello vamos a invitar a tres representantes de este grupo tripartito que hemos formado: Lord Badwell, Inés Almeida y Cristina Muñoz. Lord Badwell es licenciada en veterinaria por la Universidad de Toulouse y trabaja desde 2020 como jefa de proyectos de asuntos regulatorios y temas transversales en la Agencia Francesa de Medicamentos Veterinarios. Por otro lado, Inés Almeida, en su caso, es doctora en veterinaria y trabaja actualmente como jefa de unidad de gestión y autorización de medicamentos veterinarios, pero en la Dirección General de Alimentación y Veterinaria portuguesa. Y por último, Cristina Muñoz, que creo que todos la conocéis y no le hace falta presentación, pero aún así recordamos que es la coordinadora del Plan Nacional en España y que representa a España en el Comité Europeo de Medicamentos Veterinarios, en la EMA, además de ser la presidenta del Grupo de Eficacia y jefa de área en la agencia en la parte de medicamentos veterinarios. Así que bienvenidas a las tres y os damos paso para vuestra presentación sobre la iniciativa tripartita España, Francia y Portugal.
You will start.
Good morning to you all. Thank you for being with us today, those of you who are physically present, but also those of you who are connected online. As good neighbors, we're going to share the presentation amongst the three of us. I'm just going to introduce the why or the reason for this project, why we thought about organizing it. As you all know, the new plan that we have adopted this year, the veterinarian part, we have considered as a big study for prudent use of antibiotics. And this plan for veterinarian we have proposed for every species, for every category, with 3 satellite groups. We need data in terms of resistances, we need data in terms of consumption, but we also need to have drugs available, antibiotics or alternatives that we may prevent their use or use instead of, in order to minimize the impact in each one of these species, in each one of the productions, therefore.
Why
did we do this availability group? Well, because, yes, we're one health. We always work together, obviously, and as the director of the agency has explained to you, there's a big pharmaceutical strategy, one of the pillars of which is this one, but very much focused from the human part. And we have some specificities that tend to be ignored sometimes. We have a big diversity of species of destination, and working with just one of them as humans do makes things easier. In our case, it's more complicated, but we also have the so-called minor species. We're now in the limited markets from the financial point of view. They're not attractive for the industry. But then also, the veterinarian formulations sometimes are complex because we have to treat big groups of animals, and therefore we need more, sometimes, complexity. We have more complexity. We add production animals or food-producing animals. We need to establish the maximum levels of waste and waiting times and so on. Now we have the new legislation. It is a very good legislation. It has told us that we need to change our mindset in the type of use we were doing in terms of antimicrobials. But that represents some restriction, and when you need to implement them into the field, they're generating a series of challenges. And we need to solve them, especially those of you who are in the field. You need to face them every day. The list of antimicrobials that have been restricted for human use has generated and is going to generate problems in terms of the small animals, especially where we just have one antiviral to use because of the cascade of the human part, and that generates a vacuum, and that generates a challenge in the daily practice. And obviously then, I don't need to tell those of you who are from the industry, you do not include in your near objectives the development of a new antibiotic. No doubt. What is the objective? Reducing the consumption of antimicrobials, especially antibiotics in veterinary, right? Well, research is not encouraged. The development of a new antibiotic is not encouraged if you say that the objective is to reduce it, right? So we see that we have a series of specificities, peculiarities in terms of investment. Look, the red part represents the investment in human drugs. We are dark blue, 6% of investment only, so markets are quite different, right? Therefore, todo esto que estoy presentando lo que hace es crear retos que no llevan a la industria a decir, bien, vamos a elaborar, vamos a desarrollar nuevos antibióticos, vamos a plantear que en un futuro se necesitan nuevas moléculas, etc. Bien, vale, todo esto lo podemos ver que se está traduciendo. And this is translating into the fact that we have therapeutic vacuums that try to, or gaps that we're trying to be identified in an survey at Europe, where they said that the practical veterinarian, the vet practitioner, what was the perception that they had of those gaps in the field? And most of them say that it's antibiotics and vaccinations, which are a very important part in veterinary, that we're trying to promote. The vet practitioner every day is requesting us to develop new vaccines. As you can see, that this is the majority of what they perceived. But then we also have all the concerns that were told to them in the survey. They consulted the industry. They asked them, what do you perceive as challenges in terms of veterinary now for the near future? And their concerns were, well, I'm afraid of the regulatory pressure. then innovation, maybe it's not going to be promoted or facilitated innovation in veterinary. That's very important to promote the development of new alternatives and new molecules. But they said, we still perceive that antibiotics in vet are still essential. Obviously they are. Let's not have any doubt. But then there's another perception from the industry, which is, and this is something that I see in every talk I give, that people at large perceive the use of antibiotics in vet as a risk for the human health, especially because they do not differentiate the residues in food and multi-resistant bacteria that can be transferred via the food, and we need to educate obviously people. More and more, there's different pharmaceutical companies that are getting merged, and that means that there's going to be a very small number of players left. What do we have then? What are we trying to identify? What was the influence in order to decrease the shortage that we had? What is it that we can do in order to increase the availability of veterinary or antimicrobial drugs, especially antibiotics, but not only? This slide shows an example of apiculture that has only 4 molecules approved, not only for all the species. What is the problem they have? Every time they want to include an species, we need to establish an MLR, a waiting time, and we need to do new studies in terms of dosage and so on. So it is not easy to include new species in this.
Bien, pues formado el grupo, se nos ocurrió decir, seguro que estos problemas no son solo nuestros, estos problemas afectan a muchos más Estados
I'm sure that these problems affect many other member states. Let's start joining forces, because I'm sure that if we do join forces, we're going to fulfill our objectives sooner and better. And why don't we start with our neighbors? We get along with them very well. So we went to France and Portugal, and they immediately gave us a very enthusiastic response. I'd like to thank them from the very beginning. They gave us their support, they joined the project, they understand very clearly that the objective we want to reach is going to be adequate for us, the 3 countries actually. Therefore, we went to them, we organized the 3-pillar or 3-partite model, and it has become 4-partite with Ireland, following the popularity of these issues in Europe. And now, Laure is going to tell you about what data we started to use, the criteria we started to use in order to get to the priorities, which are the ones that we're going to present now. Thank you.
So I will continue in English. Sorry, I can't speak Spanish, but I want to say I'm very pleased today to be with you and to be involved in this Spanish initiative to work out in this tripartite group. So, and being invited in Madrid. So, yes, if we consider the unavailability of antimicrobial or the alternatives, they could correspond to three types of unavailability. So either there is no antimicrobial or alternative available on the market, but available only in other countries. Second case is where those antimicrobial are available, but not approved for all the relevant species or for the targeted indication. And the third case could be also if they are available for the right species and indication, but that the dosage or duration of treatment or any other specifications still need to be updated or optimized. And the last case is when there are really absence of therapeutic or alternative in the considered disease. So in France, at least, we try to draft a cartography of the gaps, of the therapeutic gaps, and then to identify the gaps and the availability issues, and then to record the therapeutic gaps encountered in the field, and the issues which are faced in each sector. So as far as possible, we tried to assess the reasons for those gaps and to prioritize those gaps and alternatives, and then to set up an action plan and with various, because there are various action players to try to solve those gaps. And the communication is also very important. So here you have a summary figure where you could see those different situations we faced. And you see here that if there is an available antimicrobial or alternatives for the concerned species and indication, then the gaps may be due to a perceived unsatisfactory efficacy, for instance, or persistent shortages, or especially when they concern a critical antimicrobial or alternative. And in case we have a VMP approved for another species or indication than the targeted one, then some issues could occur on the cascade application. And for instance, if there is no MRL for food-producing animals, or if the cascade is difficult to apply, and especially encountered in case of, for instance, milk withdrawal period, which is too long, or also for eggs, for laying hens, for instance, if you have to downgrade the eggs for a too long time. And in case there is no VMP available, also this is because of the lack of medicines. And the last case is when there is no current therapeutic solution for one disease. So these are those reasons which are listed here. So we try as far as possible to analyze those gaps. So I told you that in France we have this initiative to set up a cartography with the help of vet practitioners on the field. But we have also other data sources which could be very helpful and which are also analyzed in Spain and Portugal, and where it could be where prescription, off-label prescription could be recorded and then help to record those gaps. And also we could analyze the import demands outside from the Europe or from coming from other member states. And also we could, as data source, we could analyze the needs for the authorization for temporary use, and then these are all the data sources which are available to assess those gaps. So we try as far as possible to perform a risk analysis, so to assess biological hazard, just in case, and especially when the disease is also zoonosis, it could be important. And also we try to assess the risk on the therapeutic side and also the possible economic consequences. I would say that in France we have not really a standardized risk assessment so far. We tried to, but it was not so easy. So now we try to at least get an agreement from everybody to define 3 to 5 major gaps on which we will concentrate our efforts to try to solve them. So I will hand over to Ines.
Thank you so much, Laura. Okay, so the next slides will resume the information that was provided to you in this infographic that is available now with you here, and also will be available later to all the stakeholders. Before continuing, just saying a small remark on the different limitations arising from the data sources. As specific data from some species are not comparable with the level of detail that we have for others. But let's start with fish farming. External parasitic diseases are the most commonly treated through bath treatment, but it is necessary to make available such active substances under VMP authorizations, as nowadays they are authorized as disinfectants. In relation to oxytetracycline, there is a need to extend the use of this active substance not only for other species, but also for other diseases. And his was already mentioned by Christina, the main limitation in aquaculture is the lack of active substance approved. So there is a constant need for new antibiotics. Regarding alternatives to the use of antimicrobials, injectable polyvalent vaccines against etiological agents of interest for each species are critical. This allows handling the fish just in once, reducing the stress, and the use of antimicrobials after handling to prevent opportunistic infections. In rabbit farming, analyses clearly show the lack of therapeutic options and alternatives to treat the most important disorders occurring in this species. For instance, epizootic rabbit enteropathy, a severe gastrointestinal syndrome that affects post-weaning rabbits and causes substantial economic losses, and in rabbit farming, there is a need for antibiotics on oral form as villemicin. Villemicin is not used in human medicine, and it's paramount. Parenteral long-acting penicillins to be used for mastitis caused by Staphylococcus has also been identified as a major priority. This VMPs has been used outside the marketing authorization with good results. And at last, for vaccines, we have the review of myxomatosis vaccines. There have been some outbreaks from myxomatosis detected in farms, and also respiratory diseases also identified. And for ringworm, there is no available treatment at the moment, so the need for vaccines and VMPs are also very important. For small ruminants, in goats and sheep are probably the second and the third food-producing species where we could find the most of the VMPs to be used out of the marketing authorization. For sheep, the need for ovine respiratory disease complex disease was highlighted as very prior in the sector, and it has major impacts on AMR. For goats, there is a need for antimicrobials, namely marbafloxacin as injectable form to treat mycoplasmosis, oral forms of diclazuril for coccidiosis, and also vaccines for respiratory diseases. For common needs for both species, we have identified the need for specific intramammary antimicrobials for mastitis, as cloxacillin, other antiprotozoa VMPs against cryptosporidiosis, and out of scope of the AMR, the need of anti-inflammatory VMPs was also identifying during this data gathering. Despite the fact that cattle is one of the food-producing species with more authorized VMPs, the data gathering and risk analysis show there are some diseases that need more therapeutic tools. In fact, the need of decoquinate for individual treatment of coccidiosis, pleuromothylin's injectable form for respiratory disease infections, and the need of vaccines against Leptospira pneumoniae is very needed in this sector. Plus, the need of the SPC adjustment on doses and treatment duration is crucial for antibiotics of category D, such as tetracyclines. The alternative antibiotics from the group B in intermammary with shorter withdrawal periods for milk is also in the front line. And we can add the need for topical antibiotic forms for ocular infections and teeth injury. Laura, back to you.
Thank you. So now we'll move to the needs for broilers and turkeys. So the needs are for Salmonella because especially for in vivo vaccines and to be targeted to various serotypes encountered in the field. And also for enteric and respiratory infections. And where we need other antibiotics with shorter duration of treatment and withdrawal period. And for turkeys, also there are quite a lot of need, I would say, for hemorrhagic enteritis, where it would be very useful to have a vaccine, and also for histomoniosis and aspergillosis. And also need is for in vivo vaccines because they could be indicated only for Gallus and not for other species like turkeys or guinea fowls. And now for laying hens. So the main needs are concerned respiratory infections, where we need more vaccines, and also there is a need for bronchodilators or mucolytics, and also anti-inflammatory drugs with applicable withdrawal periods without having to downgrade eggs for too long. And here there is some MRL issues. And also the need is for the control of red mite with some more antiparasitic drugs or vaccines if possible. And there is also some needs in not in antimicrobial but for antiparasitic drugs, and especially for tapeworm infestation. And because of the increase of outside breeding and bio-breeding, there is more parasitic infestation. So this is where we need some more VMPs too. Now for pigs. So one of the main gaps is concerned diarrhea, neonatal diarrhea caused by rotavirus, where vaccines are available in some other countries, but in some others they are not already available or not already marketed. And also there is a need for post-weaning colibacillosis, where there we need more approved VMPs and vaccines. And now on swine dysentery, where there is a need for bacitracin, salicylate, and also vaccines. And there are also some other needs on available approved antimicrobial, like tetracyclines, where there is a need for some more work on the dosage approved and the duration of treatment. and then also some work on fluorphenicol. So just not to avoid to speak about bees. So here there is not really a need for antimicrobial, but for other antiparasitics, for the varroa, because this is the main issue. And of course there are already a lot, well, quite a lot of approved VMPs on that indication. But some lack of efficacy could be recorded, and then there is a need for other alternative. And now for horses, so non-producing animals. So there is a need for the gap is for the treatment or the management of theileriosis, because buparvaquone is available in some other countries. So there is a need here to have approved approved VMPs on the national market, and also for the sepsis, where we need some antibiotics which could be administered intravenously for urgent care, and like metronidazole or other antibiotics from group C or D. And also for topical use, there is a need here of antimicrobials. And in another area, then we, like for bees, we need some more ectoparasiticide and approved VMPs. Now for cat and dogs, there is also a need for antimicrobial, and especially like for horses, some approved product which could be administered intravenously, category, and for non-critical antibiotics like ampicillin, amoxicillin, or cefazolin or metronidazole. And there is a need also for viral infection, ocular viral infections with antiviral compounds, and also for some other bacterial infections with the use of chloramphenicol or ciprofloxacin with ointment or drops. There are other needs also for keratoconjunctivitis, so once again for ocular treatments, where, for instance, Optimune is not available in all countries, like in Portugal, where it's not available. And I don't know precisely how is it in Spain and Portugal, but in France we faced a lot of issues with the restricted prescription list of human medicines, because it's a very long process to update or modify the list of the restricted prescription list of human drugs, and then the cascade is not very easy to apply. So I think that's all. This is the last one. So thank you very much for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias a las tres por la presentación. La verdad es que...
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was not just interesting, it really put things into focus. The current problems in terms of supply of veterinary antimicrobials. We're well on time. We're going to have the coffee break. So I'll ask you to come back punctually at 12 o'clock. We will begin again. And then we'll have time for Q&A and any questions you might have during the panel session. Thank you. See you at 12 again.